Welcome to the Southern Report. Thank you so much for your time. Before I bring on my friend John Haller, and we're having an amazing conversation of what is going on your side of the pond, my side of the pond, just remind you about the film festival that's happening streaming online, which is the 1A Film Festival, 1afilmfest.com. Please look it up. Please buy a ticket. Please organize a watch party. It goes through explaining what's happened over the last 4 years and why it's important to get the information out. And I will be over there myself at the festival and showing 2 of my films. So let's bring on John. John, hello, sir. Thank you very much for being here with me and your time. I hope you are well.
Always good to be back with you.
So, John, I just want to give you a scenario. There you are preaching in your church, okay, and you're going through your references, you're putting stuff up and saying, and then you suddenly say, I found this on Wikipedia. I found this on Wikipedia. So, John, is that the kind of reference point that you would give in regard to Wikipedia?
Well, I certainly wouldn't do that. It probably would be the last time I did it, at least in that pulpit at that church. You know, I found a good theology article on Wikipedia about this passage, and I would say that the congregation that we have at Fellowship Bible Chapel would probably descend into uproarious laughter at that statement. So, and the reason we were talking beforehand about, you know, are we going to base our talk here today on good research, or can we just do the Candace Owens method? I read it on Wikipedia. And by the way, she's doing it all the time now. It just wasn't the Star of David thing that she was doing to lambaste the Jews. It was about the Allied armies at the end of World War II engaging in ethnic cleansing of Germans.
Right.
She's completely lost. She's lost her mind. I mean, I listened to her the other day. I just was so upset I could hardly. I had to turn it off.
Was she? And I need to follow this up because we have that over here. We've got that elsewhere, where people are starting to push Holocaust denial, go down that route, and then explaining, well, Hitler wasn't all bad, and various comments.
She said that too the other day. He was a nationalist.
Right.
And then she was citing Mussolini as a good guy too.
Right. Well,
it's like, and by the way, so this sort of leads to a couple different topics. So I think I don't remember if we talked about this on prior programs that we did. Trevor Loudon, who's done a lot of great research on the Red-Green Alliance, which I think is exactly correct. He has an interview over at the RAIR Foundation, RAIR Foundation, which is kind of, I guess I would call it a libertarian think tank, but it's very, very good. And what he talked about was the propagation of Russian communist propaganda into the MAGA community, the Make America Great Again community, which also carries with it a lot of anti-Semitism. And I've noticed this. I've been talking about this for a number of months now. And it started on October the 8th. It was the day after the attack in Gaza. And I turned on a right-wing channel that I listened to, and they were saying something about, it looks like the Jews are going to drag us into another war. They've just been attacked. People have been slaughtered. Kibbutzim in the Gaza border area have been burned. People have been, I've watched the videos, okay? and they were murdered, they were slaughtered, they were mutilated, everything. And the one thing that on a right-wing channel was, oh, I guess these Jews are going to drag us into another war. I mean, where did they come up with this?
Well, we've got that, we've got that over here, and of course, then you've got let's say it, you've got people like Tucker Carlson saying the same, as in there's inferences that are not helpful, and that they are then making you think and saying, well, hold on a minute, this sounds very, very anti-Semitic.
But sometimes what they'll do is they'll bring on somebody who is anti-Semitic, like Tucker did with Munther Isaac from Bethlehem, who's a liberation theologian, Palestinian liberation theologian, and it's and so Tucker will have him on and never challenge him, so he gets all the anti-Semitic stuff in there, and he doesn't even have to do any of the talking. And Candace Owens was doing this as well. And I watch programs like Bannon's War Room. Okay, so I haven't watched it too much the last few weeks, but because I've been busy. But they'll have on somebody like Carolyn Glick, or they'll have on a rabbi to talk about Israel. And you ought to read the comments. It is unbelievable. It is a Jew-hating sewer of stuff that flows through those comments. And I get the same thing. And I don't know why on my Twitter feed, my Twitter feed is filled with these things every day. So let's look at Candace Owens as an example. So right now there's a controversy in England, and I don't know if you saw Carolyn's program that she put up last night. I think you might have sent me the link, but I did watch it. It was very, very well done. I have a lot of respect for Carolyn. I know even friends in Israel I know that don't agree with her on a lot of times or consider her kind of a bomb thrower. But I've been following her for 15 years or more. And I really think that this is her moment right now. I
couldn't agree with you more.
And so I've been trying to arrange an interview with her. We just haven't been able to connect. And I know she's in the U.S. right now with her family. And the question is, I have a couple people I'm trying to interview that are Israeli journalists. And they're in the U.S. And I asked one of them, the question is, are you going to be able to get back home? Because, a lot of airlines have already canceled their flights into Tel Aviv because of the looming war. And so the question is, so a lot of them are on vacation right now, and are you going to be even able to get back home to your house? But so Carolyn did this on her program the other day or yesterday. There's a situation, and it's all over the pro-Hamas Palestinian media, that Jewish soldiers who take care of Palestinian prisoners have raped them. And they even have some of these left-wing knuckleheads that are involved in the military and the courts in Israel that are propagating this nonsense. Everything is videotaped in these prisons for this reason. And part of it may be that at least the story that I've seen that seems to have the most credibility is that one of these guys tried to smuggle a
phone, wasn't it?
Cell phone in through his rectum, put it in his rectum, and he got injured when they took it out. But I'm telling you, the Jew hating Twitter people are all over this. And now they're saying, oh, now videotape evidence is coming out to prove this. And I don't know that that's true.
No.
And it's causing a a big rift in Israeli society. I saw some videos. Carolyn had them on her program of people who have family members that are hostages. That, I mean, they're going after the people on the Supreme Court. They're saying, okay, you want to run everything, we're going to hold you accountable, and we're going to do to you what you do to Netanyahu. You yell outside his home all night long. Now, I'm not in favor of that, but we need to understand that there is it's so well organized on the other side, on the other political side, which I would again go back to Trevor Loudon's red-green alliance analysis or theory. They are so well organized that when we sit here, people that would oppose this, we don't even know what to do because they're so well organized. I mean, they control so many levers of power. I mean, you saw this with the nomination of Kamala Harris, or as I like to refer to her, Kamala Harris. And I said that this woman who had a reputation of extremely loose morals and literally sleeping her way up the political food chain or to the top of the political heap, that by the time that the media gets through with her in a week or 10 days, she will be more saintly than, Joan of Arc and the Virgin Mary combined. And I think we see that. And I mean, so here we are. I mean, what's it been, 10 days or so since she was pretty much officially announced as the nominee?
Yeah.
How many news conferences has she done in that period of time? How many questions has she answered from anyone? And it's all been this stage theater.
Well, they want to keep her away from that, and also they're in denial. I thought she was the border czar. She might have not gone down to the border, but now they're saying she never was. And then you've got comedians like Ben Stiller going, "Oh, isn't she amazing?" And I've given this amount, and other comedians. It's outrageous. Do they think the American people are that stupid, John?
Yes. Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, listen, it should be troubling that, even if they had a completely fair election, voter ID and everything, she'd probably get close to 50% of the vote. That's how bad things are in our country. Now she gets this, so she has these options for vice presidential candidates, and I don't know that vice presidential candidates mean that much anyway, but they certainly did when Biden was running, because we didn't know that he was going to make it, and he obviously didn't. But so they could have got Josh Shapiro, but he's Jewish, and so they're openly talking about this on CNN. And I don't know that she can really have a Jewish guy on her, a guy who's ethnically Jewish on her ticket because of the thing in Israel and what that means to her constituency.
Well, if you flip that, would they say that about a Muslim? Would they say that about anyone else from any other background? So you're saying that, yes, we can't have that because we don't want to upset the 150,000 voting base of Somalians in is it Minnesota?
Well, I think Minnesota, the number of Somalians in the Minneapolis, St. Paul area is about 250,000.
Right.
In Columbus, Ohio, where I worked, I actually sent you a picture of one and that was from 7 or 8 years ago. So my wife and I had never owned a gun in my life, and my wife finally said about 8 years ago, I think it's time. And so I signed up for concealed carry course. I got in my car, drove over to another building a few blocks away. As I'm parking my car, because I was going to leave from the legal seminar that I was going to go straight home, I look up and there's a guy it's 62 degrees that day in Columbus. It's in December. He's got a muscle shirt on. He's built like an Ohio State linebacker. So he's like 6'2", 230, solid muscle. And he has on gloves, a short sleeve shirt, form fitting, gloves, and a full face balaclava, where you can only see his eyes. And he's walking down the street, 1 block from the state capitol building, taking pictures of buildings.
Wow.
And so I followed him down the street. I called the police. They came over to where I was and took the pictures I got off my phone. My understanding is from connections I have that they were sent up to the task force on terrorism. And of course, that was 7-8 years ago. Nothing's come of it, but we have 150 to 175,000, maybe more Somalian Muslims in Columbus. I mean, we're sort of tracking Minneapolis, and they live in a I wouldn't call it a ghetto, a neighborhood area near downtown Columbus. And I've been told by police that it's essentially a no-go zone. They don't go in there unless they absolutely have to. They have mosques, that type of thing. Even where I lived up in Dublin, there was a huge mosque up there, and you'll every now and then Middle East Media Research Institute will play a sermon from that mosque up near where I lived about what they intend to do. So we have this massive problem in the United States. I mean, and so what did they do? So what did Kamala Harris do? She hires or chooses a running mate, the guy who was, Minneapolis governor during the whole George Floyd thing. And that George Floyd thing is just, it was this narrative, what happened, I know what happened, and what really happened was never the truth. I mean, they did a prosecution, they got a favorable jury, they got the decision that they wanted. And so the narrative gets built.
Yeah, and there was a very good documentary made by Liz Collins, I think is one of the filmmakers. And then there was another gentleman whose name is gone. There's a documentary about that and what had happened. The documentary shows body cam from the police officers involved, which had never been released, I don't think. And that the bottom line is that no, Chauvin did not kill George Floyd. And there was if people want to go and do the research, go and do it. Look up the gentleman. The surname is Lowry. He is a wonderful academic, I think, from maybe in Berkeley. And then one of his guests, I think, regular people he talks to, I think is a gentleman called John Whitmore. I believe they try and find the link. And they as people, both Black Americans, within their many, many years of making comment academically and all the rest. And they just said, we watched this has changed our mind, changed how we view things. So of course, we all remember the so-called summer of love over this whole thing, the BLM riots on your side of the pond, the BLM stuff over here. And I'll just make a comment on this, John.
Sure.
The now Prime Minister of this country, Keir Starmer, or as some people are calling him, Keir Starlin. I didn't mean to make a film, The Irish Echo, predicting communism, but it is. Now I feel as though I'm living in my movie. But he then gave the knee in these BLM riots. He gave the knee with Angela Rayner, the deputy leader of the Labour Party. There was a classic picture of both of them on either side of the desk. There's a very infamous picture of Metropolitan Police officers giving the knee as well. So that is what the Prime Minister of this country has done. So he is a barrister. He's a KC. Then if you went to him and said, well, hold on a minute, we've got evidence that says this in regard to Chauvin. No, he didn't do that with Floyd, with George Floyd, etc. I wonder what he would say. I wonder whether he would retract his kneeling. But look at all this virtual signaling. You had the virtual signaling of Pelosi and co. when they had the African scarves around them, didn't they? And they're all giving the knee and all this. You cannot make any of it up, sir.
No, I mean, so you and I have been going back and forth a little bit, and I was going to talk about it in my update Sunday, but I just didn't have time to get to it. I would go longer, but I have people that help out that, they have things like families. They want to eat meals at fairly regular times.
Yep.
So, I try to keep it to an hour. I sometimes go to an hour, 45 minutes. But I watched the video of Starmer, who was talking about this response that he made last week to sort of the start of your version of I don't even know what I would call it, Islamic Lives Matter or something like that. That's going on, and he said we're going to go after the far right people. It's always the far right person problem. And I'm watching these videos that are coming across my Twitter, and I have to tell you that, yeah, look, I've seen some people in these protests that have done stuff that they shouldn't do. But I also see whole groups of men marching down the street with knives and axes. And then if somebody complains about it, they get arrested. And they're coming after Tommy Robinson again. And Tommy's calling for peace, as he always does, as far as I can tell. And everything just seems to be completely out of kilter. Like everything's out of touch with reality. And honestly, I mean, what did Labor get in the last election? About 19% support of I don't know of the voters who voted or of the total voting population. And they're running around acting like they got 95% approval.
They don't have that. They don't have that, John. I mean, as you and I think have discussed previously. So, but I also want to say this very, genuinely. Thank you that you know this stuff. Thank you that you are paying attention to what's going on over here. I want to thank you for that, because I know, and we have other friends and other contacts that do, but genuinely, a lot of times people don't, from your side of the pond. So I am genuinely very grateful to you for that, because I know that you do. So 40%, you could argue 59.6% turnout to vote. So that's just over a fraction of 40% didn't vote. It was the lowest electoral turnout for many years. Starmer got less votes than Jeremy Corbyn in 2019. So you then whittle it down, and it seems as though that they only, out of the 60%, out of the 59.6% who voted, they've only nearly just about got 20% of that vote. You're right. So because we have the first past the post system in various areas, they have just got through maybe with 90 votes or 135 votes and stuff like this. It's very, very close. You're right. They may have the mandate, they may have the parliamentary mandate, but as far as I'm concerned, they do not have the mandate from the people. And the awful events, and I am not excusing anyone in regard to the violence at all. Now, what I will also say, and I'm going to say this publicly because it's been said, I don't particularly appreciate the fact that it seems that Nigel Farage has now thrown Tommy Robinson under the bus. I don't particularly appreciate that either. There are then what we have as well. We've had the so-called press in this country going, oh, it's the EDL. Well, the EDL was disbanded 8-10 years ago. They have also said, on the other flip side, you then have LBC, a radio show based out of London, which is so left, they've just gone round the corner. But you have people like James O'Brien calling the riots the Farage riots, which is also another outrage. So you're right. This whole the right wing, basically, John, what it is anyone that doesn't agree with them, right? And Keir Starmer wants to take us back into the European Union. So we are a democracy, which you quite rightly would argue on your side of the pond is mob rule, even though you are facing some of that within your own political setup. This is where we're at. Where anyone that voted for these people, Keir Starmer, as far as I'm concerned, Labour is not the traditional party of people of the workers, of the working class in this country. Now it's become North London multimillionaire, expensive houses. No, we don't. We wish to look down on these plebs, but we have two-tier policing, and that is now proven. We have the police. You're right. They are concerned about tackling people who then are Muslim background carrying knives on the street. We've seen Palestinian flags. There was an incident in Birmingham where a young white lad was then beaten up by this mob. He's in serious condition, and you've got Palestinian flags. You've got them letting down the tires of television crews and stuff like that. That's rather interesting. But we've got television companies that cover all this up, John. They are complicit.
Well, I've watched some of the media. I mean, I see the media. It probably was the BBC when Ismail Haniyeh was assassinated in Tehran.
Mm.
The BBC's out there, moderate. I don't know. Maybe it was Reuters. Maybe it was BBC. Moderate Islamic leader is assassinated. The guy was a murderer.
Mm. And so was his bodyguard.
I know. They were thugs. They were criminal thugs.
Mm.
And I referred to Sinwar in one of my updates recently as subhuman, for which somebody immediately posted a comment. I can't believe a Christian man would refer to anybody like that. It was created in the image of God. And I'm like, I don't care. By the way, let's cut to the chase here. What do you think Jesus is going to do to these people when he comes back? Right? I mean, he's not coming back as some Northern California, Marin County, pot smoking, peace loving thing. He's coming back in judgment and vengeance. And so now Sinwar is now, first they thought it was going to be this Majid Khalid, whatever his name is, who was going to become the political director of Hamas. But now they're just saying, no, Sinwar is going to do both the military and political sides. And Sinwar, by the way, he was spending time in prison in Israel because he had tortured to death 4 Palestinian Arabs.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I don't understand. I do not understand the world that I live in anymore. So Starmer, back to your thing in the UK with the conflict now that's going on. Somebody sent me a picture of like all the things that have been done by these immigrants and the gangs and the raping and the grooming and all of this stuff. And then somebody complains about it and they go to jail.
Absolutely right. I think I sent you a list as well. You're absolutely right, because the build up to this, and hear me, I am not excusing the violence. That's the last thing I want to see. And I think if we can get around to disobedience in regard to take a few lessons from Martin Luther King, and then of course the big lesson, which is, we want to be known by our character, which seems to be forgotten. But you're right. The build up to it, a soldier was stabbed multiple times on the streets in uniform. There is a and a lady, I think maybe late 60s, could be wrong, just try and check that, who was then out, I think, walking a dog, attacked, maybe even be murdered. We have then had this dreadful incident in Southport, and the frustration was of the fact that people felt the police knew who he was. They didn't release the name. They're then concerned about, is he a Muslim? Is he an immigrant? I think I'm right in saying that his parents came over from Rwanda, so he's second generation. I'm not sure if he's a Muslim or whatever. I need to then go down that rabbit warren.
That was the guy who did the stabbing you're talking about.
Yeah, this is yeah,
By
absolutely.
the way, they're using a picture of him in the news in like the Times of London from when he was like 12 years old, and he's like 17 now, and he doesn't look anything like he did when he was 12.
Absolutely. And let's just put it in context. He stabbed a 7-year-old and an 8-year-old and a 9-year-old girl who were at a dance class, Taylor Swift. With some young ladies who were teaching that, who bravely got in the way, because there were other children that were stabbed. The 7, 8, 9-year-old died. There was another male businessman that was there trying to stop him as well. Very brave adults in that situation, but appalling, beyond, but indescribable what went on. The fact that you've got this guy going in there with a knife, like a kitchen knife, and stabbing and killing 3 beautiful girls. And I've been to Southport in the past. A friend of mine lives there, but the key thing is that kind of community, people are going to know people, are going to know people, are going to know people. And of course, Starmer comes along, a very, very robotic. If he had any nous or political nous, he would have actually engaged with people that were haranguing him, throwing comments his way. He should have. He read the room. He cannot read the room, this man. He cannot read the room, because basically, let's put it in context, John. Last September in Canada, he was at a meeting with Trudeau, Ardern, Tony Blair was there. And he is a technocrat. He's a civil servant with a golden handshake. You wouldn't believe. He is a civil servant. And that is all he has known. And he then, I don't personally, he can't handle it, but he wants any excuse, as though his puppet masters, etc., they want any excuse to shut down the internet, control the internet, get rid of X, bring in digital currency, bring in everything that everyone else has talked about. We are facing tyranny, and we do see the 2-tier policing, definitely. And I actually would even go so far as to say, who knows, we might end up having another election at this rate, even though he's got a large majority. I don't think they can handle it. The Labour Party have only been in the country for a month, only in power for a month, and then everything is blown up. They can't handle this because 2016, we voted to leave. We had voted in 2010 election, 2015 election, even before that. Will you sort out immigration? Will you stop this? We cannot handle it. And we had hundreds of thousands of people come in last year. I know they'd say that 340,000 then left, but we can't handle it as a country. We fit into Texas 2.5 times, and we have a population of 68 to 70 million people. We are seeing the country change before our eyes, and I'm sorry, but this doesn't work. People, the working class in this country, have shouted up north. They have shouted about that, and also as we see the de-industrialization of our own country. Hear me. I do not want the violence one iota, but it's as though if you are then a white working class lad who then is turning around saying, I have had enough, genuinely, it's as if they're going to be arrested. But if you are someone who then is shouting Allah Akbar, then you're not going to be arrested. I'll just quickly say this. There was a awful incident at Manchester Airport a couple of weeks ago, where basically this WPC, I think, asked to search this Muslim lady. The two sons took umbrage to this, and then they attacked the police. They broke the women police officer's nose. They were going for tasers, going for guns, and all the rest. And this had been a build-up to the footage of the camera work, the footage that was shown of the policeman stamping on the guy's head. What people hadn't realized is how much these two guys were trying to take them out beforehand. And there was a narrative that built up. A group of Muslim people then go to the police station, start shouting and screaming Allah Akbar outside, and then the video footage explaining the story behind the story then comes out, and then the narrative is flipped. It has to be said, you and I say it, we're also putting things in biblical context. If people want to go for a caliphate, we are then in prime position for that, because it's about Islam, and then they'll turn around and go, well, we're going to outbreed you 6%. We have to be able to have this comment. You sent me today a tweet by Gad Saad. Gad comes from Lebanon. We know about the civil war in 1975. So does Bridget Gabrielle, etc., etc. This is not the first time. And people in this country are turning around and going, well, hold on a minute. No, I'm not happy. I'm not happy with what is going on. And this country is not racist. It's incredibly, unbelievably tolerant. But to stop the riots, the easy thing to do is to stop all immigration now, period. Stop it. In just over the last month of Starmer's regime as prime minister, just over 3,000 illegal immigrants has come in, because down south, around the London area, suburbs, down south it's wealthy. They then don't see any of this past Watford. They don't see the concerns that Tommy Robinson has had from being brought up in Luton, etc. Now, we could also say that would be the same in America as well, that people wouldn't see certain things. Now, we're going to get to a point where maybe I can't even say that, John. You and I wouldn't be able to sit.
No, I mean, look, this is things are changing really, really quickly. We've had this thing on our immigration. And I remember, so back in, 2015, 2016, the flow of immigration from the Middle East and Islamic countries into Europe was good. And it was mostly military age males. Who then are going to bring in their families, and they're going to produce children at an enormous rate. And, Mark, I'm a Bible prophecy guy. And one thing, I think the conference where we first met in Lima, Ohio 5 years ago, the Go Therefore conference up there, I talked briefly at Mike Spalding's request about demographics, the changing demographics in the world that we were seeing. And look, I don't harbor, I'm not a racist or anything like that, but I also know that there's a big difference between immigration today and immigration back in the late 1800s, early 1900s.
Absolutely.
And the people coming out. Let me give you an example. My mother grew up in a non-churched home. I mean, she maybe went to church before the time she went to college. She'd been to church less than 10 times. And my grandfather claimed to be an atheist. My mother was the sort of the quintessential WASP, but mom was dating a Jewish guy, and my grandmother was just scandalized by that. And so she found out that mom's best friend was going to a Christian college down south, And so my grandmother decided that my mother would go to Christian college with her friend. And what was the Christian college? It was Bob Jones University, which is known as, sort of the world's most unusual university, extremely Christian fundamentalist and that type of thing. But the interesting thing was in 1943, when my mother went to Cleveland, Tennessee, that's where Bob Jones was at the time, it wasn't culture shock for an unchurched, non-Christian person to go to a very strong, very much in your face Christian university. There wasn't a culture shock there because there was a sort of a common core to society and everything that was very much based on Christian values. But now and that was true also with immigration from Europe back in the 1800s and late 1800s, early 1900s here in the U.S. So I'm not opposed to immigration. What I'm really opposed to is completely remaking society and nations and government, everything from top to bottom, which is what we're having now with this immigration that we're facing. And
yeah, absolutely.
From a demographic standpoint, Mark, it's over.
Yeah.
It's over. It's done with. Demographics in this world are changing so quickly that they're completely upending everything. And the Islamic people, at least until they get to be more fluent, will have high birth rates. And it changes the whole nature of culture. Listen, don't tell me that they're the same. They're not the same. It's not a religion of peace.
No.
Can I give you an example? I'm looking at yesterday's Times of London here on the screen. Joy on the streets of Bangladesh as Prime Minister flees uprising. But what happened in Bangladesh? The Islamic groups, gangs were going door to door and killing, raping, whatever, Hindu people. I mean, and in India, which I believe has the highest number of Muslims of any country in the world, there's this constant clash between what I would call radical Hindus and radical, fundamentalist Islamic people. By the way, and I think the number of fundamentalist Islamic people is much, much higher percentage than everybody wants to give it credit. But so, and the demographics are changing. So that, this is the struggle in Israeli society because the sort of socialist, left-leaning people that have populated Israeli institutions all this time, they don't have any kids. They're dying off. And the Orthodox Jews are having 6 kids or more per family. When we went to Israel, I think it was 2017, we came down, we took a bus from the airport coming down through Jerusalem, an Orthodox Jewish neighborhood. Mark, I did not count them, but in a kilometer along the street there that we were driving, I know, so a half a mile, I saw 100 baby buggies on the street. And so that demographics is changing. Japan is dying off. They'll lose a couple million in population this year. China within 20 years, if the Lord tarries, could be half the size that it is now. I don't think the world is ready for this on any level. So in some respects, in America, we do need immigration because our birth rate's fallen. Yours has fallen. Some of the Scandinavian countries, and I forget Spain? The birth rate is like 1.05. South Korea is 0.78. These cultures will die in a generation. I don't know. I'm just saying, as we're on the verge of this enormous change in the world, but you put people in power like Keir Starmer, who says, well, we need to put in facial recognition to stop the people who don't want to see the slide take place. Because they're the problem. They're the problem. And it's a total bunch of propaganda, lies, and the stuff that we spread for fertilizer on fields in the in farming communities. I mean, that's all that it is, and it's so troubling. And so, Mark, when I was in Scotland last year, and the one thing that I noticed was, even from an American who spent a lot of time in New York and San Francisco and big cities, the cameras in Scotland were just absolutely shocking to me. Speed cameras, other cameras everywhere. I remember I went to what's the name of it? Asda store up there.
Yep.
And so I walk up and I go to pay, and it says, oh, well, you need to get your credit card approved. It's an American Express Gold card. And I noticed out of the corner of my eyes, the guy's walking up to approve that there was a frozen picture of me on the screen. And
wow.
And so I started out of the store. I got to the door and I thought, oh, I forgot to get water. So I went back in to get some water. I walked up to the checkout, and there had been several people there before because I watched. I walk up to the checkout, and my picture appears on the screen before I do anything. And I'm thinking, like, this is the surveillance society. It's not the surveillance society of the future. It's what I'm living in. This, by the way, this was way up north in Scotland. This was in Tain, up near Dornoch. It's a small, not a very big village. It was a big store, but a small village. And I'm like, what? And I'm sitting there thinking, like, what is going on? Because I follow this World Economic Forum and facial recognition and AI and all this other stuff, and I'm thinking, like, it's here in rural Scotland.
It's here already. It's here already, and my family come from Dornoch. Interesting enough, with the surname of Sutherland, that's where it all comes from. But the system is already here. People think, oh no, you can tell me better than I can. Oh no, it's further down the line. No, the whole infrastructure is here. I mean, people like Larry Fink are just licking their lips. They're here, and then people have gone, oh, you're both a conspiracy theorist. Really? Look at what I know. It's there, sir. Absolutely.
So, in Bible prophecy circles, we always talk about the mark of the beast technology. And my friend Patrick Wood made a very interesting comment a few months back. Actually, I've done a conference with he and Mike Spalding's fall conference in the end of September. Patrick is going to speak, and made an interesting comment. It was like, so when this mark of the beast technology that the Bible talks about in Revelation 13 comes about, it's not like the Antichrist does these things and then he and the false prophet sit down and say, okay, we need to crowdfund the development of a mark of the beast technology so we can raise money to fund this. And Patrick's point was, no, that's not the way it's going to work. The way it's going to work is, they're going to sit down and have a meeting and say, okay, now it's time to flip the switch. And all that infrastructure will be there. And I think the first time I ever got censored on YouTube was I put up a quote of Naomi Wolf. And she's not a Bible prophecy Christian or anything like that. She said all the stuff that they were doing through a health emergency was building this social credit system, and they're just going to change a couple lines of code and everything's in place. And we're there.
We are there. I've got, we've mentioned Trevor Loudon. I've got 2 of his books. I just want to show people Enemies Within and the one of Barack Obama and the enemies within. And the reason why I'm showing that, because Trevor's work is excellent. I hope to interview him as well. But it's the research that he's done. So in the last sort of 7 minutes, we could segue then into Kamala's VP pick, because Kamala's VP pick to me is one big socialist green, red axis of complete and utter lunacy. What say you?
So the question would be, who's more of a leftist, Tim Walz or Kamala Harris? And he may be worse, so she may look more palatable by comparison, I guess. Look, Minnesota is completely, it's got a lot of great conservative communities, but the cities are gone. You know, Minneapolis and St. Paul, they're just completely leftist woke culture. And so you'll have whole parts of the city destroyed through these Black Lives Matter riots, and nobody goes to jail. You know, nobody goes to prison. Or it's like, maybe it was in the thing you sent me, you know, a guy goes out and commits rape and he gets time served in jail awaiting trial. And then these other guys, they post something on Facebook and they go to jail for 4 months and completely upend their lives. And so I don't know, Mark, there's a real cruelty to this. And so what you're going to see coming out of this. So I will be honest with you right now. I don't know that Trump will win.
I agree with you.
Now part of me, I was thinking about this the other day. You know, people in our circle said every American president gets identified as the Antichrist. And I thought, well, maybe it'll be nice to have Kamala Harris get elected so we can finally put a stop to that. She'd be the first American president that hasn't been identified as the Antichrist. And then I immediately thought, oh, well, but they'll say she's the woman riding the beast. So haven't really accomplished anything there. But I do think that what you're going to see in America is more of the same. What you're seeing in the UK, we're at the situation where we would call it lawfare, where they're coming after the people they don't agree with.
That's right.
And it doesn't make any difference whether you did it or not. I'm an attorney, okay? I know the system. I've been through the system. I've been through some big white collar cases and that sort of thing. So I know how the system operates. And I'm telling you that I have a friend who got charged in a white collar case. Now, I wasn't involved in the case, but I knew him. Mark, the trial lasted for 13 months. He spent millions of dollars in attorney's fees. He was found guilty on all 11 counts because the jury didn't understand the case. He took it all the way up to the Ohio Supreme Court, and in a stunning decision, the Ohio Supreme Court not only overturned the decision, but they said that their review of the record showed that there was absolutely no evidence to convict him, and they entered not guilty findings at the Supreme Court level. I've never seen or heard of that. But the point is that now this guy's much older than I am, and he still practices law because he's trying to afford to live the rest of his life. He should be retired. They completely ruined him. Same thing's being done with guys like John Eastman, who represented Donald Trump in the challenges in the 2020 election. He's being disbarred. His whole life is being completely destroyed through this lawfare stuff. They're doing it to Donald Trump. And the issue is not whether you like Donald Trump or not, okay? The issue is whether people are weaponizing the legal system in an improper and unconstitutional manner, and that's what's being done. And now it's being done in England. By the way, it's being done to Bibi Netanyahu, whether you like him or not, in Israel.
Yeah.
And somehow we've either got to figure out a way to put a stop to this. But I don't know. I'm concerned with where it's going. I'm really concerned with where it's going.
Well, I couldn't agree, and we're in the last in the last minute. I completely agree with you, and also, I don't think that we should be just sitting back and going and doing nothing, because that's when things really do ramp up. You can just see it. I mean, the more and more people over here that are writing on the streets is like, oh, we're going to lock down this. Suddenly, I'm going to have judges going all night. We've got the prison places where you didn't have the prison places. Now, suddenly we've got them, or we'll just kick all these people out of jail and we'll put people that don't agree with our views in jail. I can see this. And I'll just end with this, John, if you don't mind.
Sure.
We, on both sides of the pond, we need to be praying for each other. We've seen this lawfare through the J6 prisoners, and my dear friend David Summerall of stop8.com is number one, who's center of the front and center of that. And I'll say to everyone, there is a film festival, 1A Film Festival, 1afilmfest.com. Buy a ticket, organize a watch party, because there's going to be films on there that are going to educate you on what's happened over the last 4 years. John, I just want to thank you so much for your time. You and I could sit down. We will sit down again. We could sit down for hours and hours. And I genuinely, again, I thank you for the attention that you give to my country. And I thank you for that. And I also, I know you pay attention to what's happening in Canada, and as I've got dear friends up there, it's important that we do. But I'm going to play us out. I'll say goodbye to you on the other side. But thank you very much indeed, sir. Thank you.